for joining me. This is part 3 of my transition story. It was originally going to be part 3 of 3, but I'm actually adding a 4th part to this. When I have tried to do the early drafts of these recordings, I realized that the HRT discussion really needs its own video. HRT, of course, stands for hormone replacement therapy. So the idea of part 3 is to talk about my life in transition after I made that decision, which I talked about at the end of part 2, to transition. Okay, I'm transitioning now. Now what? And it's been about a year since I've been on HRT, a little more than a year now at this point. So I was just going to talk about that last year. Going through the transition and transitioning during COVID, which is a little different than perhaps people in the past have experienced. Let me go ahead and jump into it. I decided to transition. I talked about that in my last video. So now the hard part. Now I've got to come out. And I was definitely motivated to come out because as soon as I made that decision, I am definitely transitioning. Like something clicked in my brain where it just became intolerable to present myself as male, and my dysphoria was just completely off the charts. And it got even worse so when I drank, I figured out. It was hard to deal with. So I was really, really motivated to try to come out as soon as possible. But at the same time, I had a little bit of a leeway because I was selling my house at the time, and I'd already started the process, so I needed to keep my name the same, and I'd already, introduced myself to the realtors and all the people involved as male, so I thought it easier just to continue doing that. And I didn't want to change my name in the middle of the house selling process because I didn't want to do anything to screw it up. If you've ever sold or bought a house, it's extremely stressful. So I knew I had a little bit of time where I was going to have to continue presenting myself as male, at least to some people. But at the same time, I wanted to make this go as quickly as possible. And different people have different ways of approaching this. I have definitely talked to folks where it's taken them a year or more to come out to everybody they know, and they've really taken their time. They just come out to the people who are really close in their life and wait for everybody else for months or a year later. And you just do whatever works for you. For me, I just need to be out and just walking about as a female, and everybody just knows as soon as it was humanly possible, house selling aside. So I was motivated and yet terrified. And I wasn't terrified because I was worried that I wouldn't be accepted. So I'm grateful for the people that I have in my life, my friends and my family. Well, I knew were all very supportive. I wasn't worried about that aspect of it. And I feel awful for people who have people in their life who they know are not going to be supportive, and that's tough. I didn't have that problem, but I was still terrified because my trans identity was something that I had kept so internalized for so very long. And as I mentioned in the last video, I think it's difficult to bring it to the surface. Very, very difficult. It is something I had never vocalized. I had friends that I've known for 10, 15, 20 years and never vocalized it. So that was difficult. And then also at the same time, I was worried that they would think that, I deceived them, that I've been lying to them for 20 years or however long we've known each other. Because I definitely have been keeping from them a very big part of who I was. It was something I had kept secret. So I was worried they would be, feel like I deceived them or lied to them. So there was still things I was worried about. And I had spoken with a friend of mine who had transitioned a couple years earlier than me. I don't consider it coming out when I told her because, I don't know, she's also trans. So it just didn't feel like coming out to me. It just felt like telling a fellow trans person something they understand, something they've experienced. Coming out is, when maybe that's just me who thinks of it this way, but to me, coming out is what you do to cis people who don't have that shared experience, or at least that's how I saw it. So I did get to talk to my trans friend and get some advice, and she said, because she had just come out just a couple years before, and for her, email worked the best. And to me, I just thought that sounded brilliant because I am a writer by nature. I like to write, no matter what it is, emails, whatever. So, and I am good at expressing myself in writing more so than in speaking. So I thought that was a brilliant idea. And she said, because it helps you to get your thoughts the way you want them. Because when you're speaking, once your words are out, they're out. You can't take them back. So I thought email was a great way to do it. The only downside potentially is waiting for a response can be nerve-wracking. But fortunately, in my case, nobody really kept me waiting that long. People were pretty quick in their responses, so that was good. So when coming out, if you're going through this experience, whether you email or not, I mean, you got to do whatever works best for you. I've told this to other people who are like, yeah, my parents don't really do email and I don't like writing. That's great. I mean, you should do whatever works for you. I'm not saying everybody needs to do email. I'm just saying that was a good suggestion for me. It worked very well for me. But generally it is a good strategy to start with somebody who you're 99% sure is going to be loving, accepting, your best friend, your closest relative, and if possible, if you have such a person in your life, somebody who has vocally expressed a pro-trans point of view and not a transphobic point of view. So you start with who you think is the easiest person and you work your way through until you get to the people who are a little more difficult to come out to, because the more that you do it, the easier it becomes. So amongst my friends and family, I kind of saved my parents for last. So by the time I got to them, it was way easier. And I didn't save them for last because I thought they wouldn't be accepting. I already knew they would be. I just wasn't sure how much they would understand. So it would be like more explaining to them. I knew they would be accepting, but I thought, well, maybe I might have to explain more to them, and that was going to take energy for me to do. So I didn't want them to be the first. I had to work my way up to that, and it turns out I didn't really have to explain as much as I thought I would. So, and of course, they were all loving and accepting. All of my friends and family were, and so I'm very, very, very lucky in that. Very lucky. I feel blessed. I'm not religious, but blessed is the best word I can think of. And then after I came out with some of my closest friends, I got some of them to agree to do Zoom sessions with me. We're all still pretty separated because it's COVID and all that stuff, and but I got them to do Zoom sessions with me. Let's just chat about whatever, just so I can get comfortable, interacting with people as my female self, and I had great friends who agreed to do that. So that was the next step for me, just getting comfortable. Then the next step is going out into public. And for me, I was selling my house, so I was looking for an apartment to move into, and I was living at the outskirts of town. It was actually one of the reasons I was selling my house is because it was kind of the woodsy, a little more rednecky area. I wanted to move into the city where I felt more comfortable and safer. I live in Portland, Oregon, and so 6'4" trans woman is like not the most out of the ordinary thing you'll see on a daily basis. Probably doesn't even make the top 10. So, and that is the first thing I noticed. So I went in town looking for apartments, and then I decided to go clothes shopping. Of course, wearing masks the whole time. And the thing that I noticed when I was like going shopping was that nobody paid any attention to me at all, which was wonderful. Because I thought, in the back of my head, I'm like, oh, people are going to be staring at me. and all this stuff. And people were just going about their day. They're in their own heads. They're doing their own thing. They're looking at their clothes and doing their shopping and not paying any attention to me at all. And if they did see me, they would just glance at me and look away like they would do any other normal time. So I was like, okay, that made me start to feel more comfortable. And I am lucky again. I'm very, very lucky to live in an area where that is the case. As I said, like, you see way, way weirder things than trans people. And not that trans people are weird, but you know what I mean. Within the context of general society thinking and what society considers abnormal and normal and weird and that sort of thing. Even within that framework, tall trans women is the weirdest thing you'll see. So that was good experience. It made me feel more comfortable. And then August 4th is the day I had started my HRT, my hormone replacement therapy. And as I said, that will be a whole other video. But then at that point, I'm pretty much full time. When I was talking on the phone to people related to the house sale, I was presenting myself as a male, but I was probably dressed female on the phone. So very shortly after I started HRT, I was pretty much full time. And so I'm transitioning during COVID. We're still very much locked down, still very much separated. I work at a school. We were in distance learning. So that started back up in August, but everything was on Zoom, online. Nothing was in person. And I thought that was actually great. For all the negatives of COVID, I'm not saying like, oh, COVID was great, yay. I'm not saying that at all, but it actually worked out for my transition, because I think in a lot of ways it was easier to transition during the lockdowns and being separated from everyone else and only seeing people, instead of going into a workplace and having to see people for 8 hours a day, and whatever my look is when I leave the door, that's my look. I can adjust it a little bit at work, but not too much. Whereas I'm seeing people in, different 15-minute, half-hour Zoom sessions spread all throughout the day, sometimes only 2 or 3 in a day. And I can get my look the way I want it. And for that just Zoom session, and if I look at it and later go, oh, that's not what I wanted, and I can adjust it. And honestly, on Zoom, like when you're one little square, bunch of squares, people don't get to see you as closely. So that made me feel a lot better. That I feel like there was less pressure on me. Because let me tell you, if you don't know this already, the first few months of your transition, and I've heard everyone who's ever done this transition ever say this, they're awkward. They're extremely awkward. It's like going through puberty again, and not just because of the hormonal stuff, but also because of just finding out trying to discover who you are as far as what you want your look to be, how you want to do your hair and your makeup and your clothing. Clothing is a big thing. Like, what is your style? Because if you've always worn clothes that are, traditionally male, and now you're wearing clothes that are more accepted as female by society, for the first time, you got to find, what works for you. So there's a lot of trial and error. So while you're going through all this trial and error, it's great to not have people see you all that much. It was pretty awesome, actually. I could do a lot of the trial and error in private. Also, not a lot of interactions with the public. And when I do go out in the public, it's usually to the grocery store most often, or to take my dog for a walk to the park. It was pretty much the only 2 things I ever did to leave the house at the time. And you were wearing a mask, and the mask covers up the most masculine part of my face, in my opinion. And not that I have to look feminine, but especially at the beginning of my transition, for my own mental health, it helps me to look as most feminine as I can. And I had no delusions that anybody would mistake me for anything other than a trans woman, because I'm 6'4" for one thing. So I didn't care about that. I didn't care about being perceived as cis, but it did make me feel better mentally to look as feminine as I felt inside. So actually, like, covering up the most masculine part of my face was pretty good. So it actually worked out pretty well that I was transitioning during COVID. And again, not that COVID was overall a great thing, because it sucked. But this was I guess the silver lining in this whole experience for me, is that it made my transition easier in a lot of ways. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is something I touched on a little bit already. It's just kind of finding my look. And if you're transitioning, whether it's male to female or female to male, to have a close friend who is, identifies as the gender that you are transitioning to, is extremely helpful. Because I had a really close girlfriend who really was hugely helpful with my makeup, with my hair. She's the one who dyed my hair, and my wigs when I was wearing wigs, and it was so helpful. It was so good. So for me, I made the mistake of cutting my hair right before I made the decision to transition. So my hair was short, and yet, like, one of the things that I've always dreamed about is having nice, long, flowing hair. And so I had short hair. So I was wearing a wig in the beginning, and I was experimenting with different wigs. And this is a part of the whole awkwardness of the first part of it, is that some of the wigs I had in the beginning weren't the best. This one that I had was good, but it was very hard to comb, and it would get all frizzy very easily, and it was difficult to maintain. And wigs were a colossal pain in the ass. So I was just waiting for my hair to grow out. And finally, I got to February. So remember, June is when I first decided to transition. July is when I came out. August is when I started HRT. So this is February when I was finally like, you know what, I'm ditching these wigs. And I went and got my hair. Well, first I had my friend dye my hair red, which is close to my color. My hair color when I was a kid was like this. And then I went and had I found a really cool transmasculine hairstylist in town, and he was very helpful. And he did my hair it brought out my natural curls. And it was shorter, still kind of short, but like I was ready to just wear my hair out. And now it's continuing to grow longer, and I am thankful to be done with the wigs. Like, I felt like I needed the wigs just for my own mental health in the beginning. It's just me. You don't have to do, if you're transitioning, you don't have to do any particular thing. Just do whatever feels right for you. As I said, my friends got vaccinated, I got vaccinated, and so I have another close girlfriend of mine who would go clothes shopping with me, and she has very similar taste, I discovered, than what I have, which is we're both very hippie-ish, which I was wearing hippie-ish clothing as a male, so of course I'm going to wear hippie-ish clothing as a female. So it was very, very awesome. I've gone on a few shopping trips with her, and having someone else to, like, I come out of the dressing room, what does it look like? And having that second opinion was great. So yeah, that was the struggle. That was the downside of COVID, is having less of that. But as time went on, I get more and more feedback from other people, and I'm feeling pretty good at this point in a year. I feel like my look will still continue to evolve, but I feel like I've hit a stride now at this point. I'm loving my hair to grow out even longer. That's going to be great for me. And that's where I'm at this point, is 1 year into my transition. If you haven't seen parts 1 and 2, I talk about the earlier parts of my life. Part 1 is I'm talking about my teenage years and how media affected my trans identity when I was coming of age. And then part 2 is making the hard decision to transition and overcoming fear and that sort of thing. So if you haven't seen those, please check them out. Also, if you're a nerd, if you're into Star Trek, Star Wars, that's mostly what I do on this YouTube channel. So please subscribe. And I've got part 4 coming up. I've got a transition timeline that should be posted sometime in the near future. So please check out all of that stuff, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.